never played it. I've heard good things.
We're also live, by the way, Nathan.
Oh, are we live?
Yeah,
Whoops.
We're live.
Hey, hello, and welcome to an all-new episode of Press YYZ. We're the only Canadian gaming podcast that you can catch live on Twitch every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as podcast services and YouTube every Thursday. My name's Nathan. Hey, how are you guys doing tonight? I'm joined by the odd couple, AJ. AJ, how are you doing?
Hanging in there. How about you?
You know, spent a lot of money recently.
Don't do that.
But it is what it is. New windows, new computer for my kid, a trip to Vancouver. It's not great.
Okay.
Cozy, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, at the very beginning of this podcast, we had a super quick, 10-second discussion about Settlers of Catan, the board game, which everybody that tuned in live to watch this episode missed out on. Maybe we should start a Patreon and charge people to hear that 10-second discussion of Settlers of Catan.
Yeah, and we'll release only the 10 seconds for the highest paid tier.
Nathan?
Yeah, well, that's something we could do. Let's take that under consideration. Also, let's do some post-related birthdays.
The way I see it, all three of us agree on it. That means even if Mitch and Alex say no, majority rules.
We'll see.
It's science.
Okay, so let's give some post-belated birthday greetings to both Cozy and Mitch, who celebrated their birthdays over the past few days. Cozy, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Belated happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. I got some real cool Comedy Button t-shirts for my birthday. My parents really stepped up and delivered. I had mentioned it to them in an email that if they could get me some shirts from the Comedy Button store, it would be real nice. And I totally forgot about it. And lo and behold, they pulled through. So shout out to them, Mr. and Mrs. Kazina. They're a real cool people.
Amazing. And then also Mitch, who cannot be here tonight, celebrated his birthday over the weekend. So happy 30th birthday, Mitch. We hope you had a great one playing Pokemon Arceus or Legends Arceus. Did I say that right? It's Legends Arceus?
So
yes.
I think so people keep saying, oh, it's supposed to be Arceus. I disagree, because the katakana for that name is Arceus. And it's a Japanese game, so it should probably be Arceus, despite some people, even high up Nintendo folk, saying otherwise.
Yeah, but I mean, there are a lot of Japanese words that are written phonetically in a way that would make sense in English, but are pronounced very differently there. And nobody goes around saying, oh man, you should pronounce it exactly the same way that they pronounce it.
Well, that's the thing though, but I kind of feel like when it comes to a word that was created with Japanese in mind, it's the least we can do to try and get a little close to it. And instead of just letting it slur out of our mouths.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it doesn't help that literally the game itself in its promotional material has vacillated between Arceus and Arceus.
Yeah.
So yeah. I feel like we've had this discussion about the pronunciation of this obscure Pokemon's name on every single episode.
I don't think we've had that discussion, but
yeah, I feel like it's happened. I just don't know when. Maybe when it first was announced, and we were trying to get around that. Okay, so let's jump in. Before we get there, though, sorry, I'm all out of order here. Just before we get started, a reminder, as always, that we here at Press YYZ stand against discrimination of any kind. And while we appreciate however you choose to give back to our show, there's no better way to support us than being excellent to each other. This is Black History Month, so please take a bit of time and check out some of the awesome content creators that are POC. There's a lot of great ones out there. And check out Khalif Adams' Spawnies. It's the Spawnies. Am I saying that correct?
Yes.
Yes, I watched them. They were very good. Check it out. I think there's a lot of good content there. So just want to give them a quick shout out. Okay. Yeah, so let's get started here. So we got a few things housekeeping wise. So this week we are reviewing Nobody Saves the World. So we all played it. We've got our thoughts. We played it for varying amounts. So we're going to have that. That being said, next week, we're going to do a very short turnaround. So next week we'll be coming back with some thoughts on Windjammers 2, because it's not a huge game and it'll either probably connect with us or not connect with us. So we'll just be doing that next week. So awesome. That being said, Cozy's going to stream on Monday, and he's looking to stream Windjammers 2. Now, it's a 2-player co-op. I don't think it would do more than 2. Does it support 4?
AJ?
What?
You're the one who suggested Windjammers.
So Windjammers... It's a little weird. Online? The online stuff is a little weird. So I tried to play online with a couple of friends, and there isn't, at least when I played it first, like a week or two ago, there was no like proper like multiplayer lobby where like, the person waiting fights the winner of the last match or something like that. It was just you challenge a friend to a Windjammers battle. And that's fine and dandy. We got Discord and stuff for people to wait and hang out. It just, it's a little cumbersome in that way, but the core of the game itself is actually fairly solid and super cool. And if you like fighting games, it's very reminiscent of that, except it's like a competitive sport like game. Super, super cool.
All right. Well, so Cozy's going to be streaming on Monday. If you do want to try and play with Cozy online, hit him up with a message. Check his just send him a DM on Twitter or message him on Twitter. I'm sure you'll put a post up on Twitter saying that you're looking for people to play with you. Correct, Cozy?
Hell yeah. Yeah.
So just reply to that or DM Cozy. He'd love to play with you and get his hands on Windjammers too. I'm going to have to play it over the weekend because I don't think I'll have... I might bring my Xbox to Windsor, so it'll be fine. Anyway, so that's our homework. Our second 12-hour stream will be happening later this month. We're still figuring it out, so please be on a hold. We're sorry that it's taken so long. We know we promised it for December. December was really busy, and getting our schedules together has proven to be more difficult than we initially thought it was. Yep. So I wish we hadn't put such a close date on it in December initially. But we will have this stream, and if it goes into late February or early March, it will be worth the wait. So please be excited.
Pro tip: don't make a secondary really long live stream as a stretch goal. Pro tip.
Yes. Especially because I think we just consider doing it again anyways, because we enjoyed doing it and raising money for the kids.
If ever we do like another 12-hour live stream independent of this one that's coming up, and we have to make it a stretch goal that we do another 12-hour live stream, we're just going to do the thing where it's like, all right, once we reach ending time for this live stream, we're just going to leave the cameras on for another 12 hours. We don't have to be on them. We're not going to necessarily do anything. If one of us decides to come into frame and play, I don't know, Zelda for 20 minutes, you get that, but we're not promising anything more.
That's not how that will work. Just don't be worried. Please don't be worried. But we will have an appropriate 12-hour stream for you guys. So thank you for being patient. We really do appreciate that. Finally. So I had announced that I'd be starting LEGO Dimensions this week. I'm not ready to start LEGO Dimensions. I'm going to be working with Cozy on a custom layout because I want to do something special for it when we start playing and have... let me just put it out there. I just want to have a special layout ready for LEGO Dimensions. Because it's not just about the game, it's about the toys. And I want to make sure that we can show off the toys in the Lego building. So I'm going to hopefully be working with Cozy on that this weekend. So that being said, not ready to start Lego Dimensions.
You could say that you're trying to bring the toys to life.
Ooh, I am trying to bring that's pretty good. So I am trying to bring the toys to life. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we'll be starting next Thursday if Cozy and I can figure out a good setup on over the weekend. That being said, I played through the entire Mortal Kombat 12 story mode or 11 story mode, which we're going to talk about when we get to what you've been playing. But you don't see a single fatality during the story mode.
What?
Because if you kill people with fatalities, it does not make sense for the story anymore.
It ends their story.
People need to continue to be reappearing in the story. Just because you fight somebody does not mean their story is over. So I thought that we'd have a fun rank the fatalities, where I'm going to go through each character's fatalities and friendships, and kind of give them a rating. And I don't know how I'm going to rate them yet. This is inspired, to be clear, I'm not ripping off Maximilian Dude, but it's inspired by Maximilian Dude. I've seen him rate other finishing moves and super moves from games before. So I need a suggestion for scale. What type of scale would you like to see in that manner? And if you want to jump in and join us, I'd love to see your ratings on them as we go through them as well. So that's what we're looking at for tomorrow night. And then hopefully we'll be starting Lego Dimensions as a complete unique turn, because can you think of anything further apart from going from Mortal Kombat from one week to Lego Dimensions the next? They're very diametrically opposed.
I mean, I guess
yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, we could be like edgelordy and be like, oh man, Manhunt, or like name any other manner of ultra violent games that come to mind. But yeah, I mean, yes and no. I agree with AJ.
Okay. All right. So that's being said, let's jump in. Do you want to start with what we've been playing, or just go right into Nobody Saves the World? Where do we want to start?
Let's talk about Pokemon. Sure. I want to talk about Pokemon.
So there's a Pokemon game, and it came out, and it's Pokemon Legends Arceus. I think I got it right.
Maybe we have to stick with one. At the end of the day, we just have to make a decision and be like, this is the one we're sticking with.
You make a decision,
right or wrong. You know what I mean?
You make a decision that's good for you. I'll make the decision that's good for me. How about
that? So that being said, we've got. So let's talk about Pokemon Legends Arceus. Tell me why I should play it. Because I played Sword and Shield and I've played Blue. What's going to interest me and get Nathan into Arceus?
There's dodge rolls.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, okay. So going into it, now listen. This might offend you a little bit. The impressions were...
Are you saying that towards me or towards Nathan?
Sorry, towards Nathan.
Okay.
He was the one who asked the question. So, listen.
Yep.
Breath of the Wild is a really good game and was very innovative and in general. A lot of comparisons with this game to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It does not go as far as that, obviously.
It's probably a good thing.
Agreed.
But there are definitely there's definitely a lot of inspiration from it in this. That being said, it's still very much a Pokemon game, which if you've enjoyed one of those in the past, you will most likely enjoy this. But what they've done is they've essentially made it more of a 3D adventure where you're wandering around the wilderness and these wild Pokemon can just randomly decide to attack you because you got too close. And by attack you, don't mean challenge you to a Pokemon battle. I mean, they will attack you with like their Hyper Beam, or they will charge at you or something to try and get you away from them. Through which you can dodge roll out of the way, or you can try to defend yourself by throwing other items at them, like smoke bombs or something like that, to try and, get them to lose sight of you. Or you can throw a Pokeball of a Pokemon that you just have inside and challenge it to a battle and battle them that way. But you could theoretically just catch a Pokemon that is just out in the wild just by you hiding in the tall grass instead of the other way around.
Oh, interesting.
Let me ask you a question, Nathan.
Okay.
Of the Pokemon games that you played, what would you say was your favorite aspect of it? Did you like the kind of gotta collect them all aspect of the series? Did you like the battling of the series? Was there some like third factor that you found yourself getting really addicted to?
That's a tough thing to think about. It's been many years since I played Blue, and I think I like Blue because it was just like a novel RPG at the time, and was in line with what I played. I will say I played Sword and Shield and kind of beat the story, then never picked it up again ever. So, while it was good enough to get through, it never really and I think when you come from something like Persona 5, for instance, which has a very fun, but very quick based turn-based battle system. And let's be honest, the Persona is kind of like adult Pokemon, demon Pokemon.
Yeah. I mean, and it also technically came before Pokemon, if you want to, go through the legacy of Shin Megami Tensei and whatnot.
Yep. No, that's 100% fair. The first Shin Megami Tensei was on the NES. So,
and I mean, if you want to go even further back, when it was just Megami Tensei, like it was on like Japanese PCs and whatnot.
So it does have lineage longer than that. I think what always got to me, I think I just never, it just felt too slow, I think, in the long run. I think what I liked about it was just the progression of it, if that makes sense, like progressing through and beating the gym leaders and getting through the story. But once the story was done, I never felt the need to go back and collect them all. And let's be honest, I've got some real completionist tendencies if I like a game, as we're going to talk about soon.
I know I just asked you a question, but I need to ask one more question before I can get into my hot take on this game.
Okay.
Did you play much of Pokemon Go?
A little bit, but not much.
Didn't really grab you all that much?
No, I think at the time too, I was working a lot. My kid wanted to play it, but it was something where our subdivision, when I took him out, never had many Pokemon around it. So I literally had to drive other places to get better Pokemon.
Right.
Which just
kind of like purpose the point, right?
Yeah.
Pokemon Go is best played in cities for sure.
Yeah. And we're right on the outskirts. It was like a 25-minute or a 20-minute drive downtown, and then I'd have to pay for parking. So anyway, sorry, go ahead, Cozy.
So here's what I've been building up to. And this is something I've had a lot of the building blocks of this take kind of mingling around in my head over the course of the past few days. But I feel like things have only really crystallized here on this podcast within the past couple of minutes. Pokemon Legends Arceus is basically Pokemon Go remade into a much more kind of hardcore and feature complete experience. I think a lot of people are regarding this as, it's the mainline Pokemon games by way of Breath of the Wild, but really, this game is, I would say, much more Pokemon Go by way of Breath of the Wild, because overwhelmingly, go ahead.
Yeah. It's if Pokemon Go was a video game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much how I describe it too. Earlier I mentioned, did you enjoy the battling? Did you enjoy the catching? Did you enjoy the whatever of the Pokemon games, Nathan? I brought that up because while battling does exist in this game, while you do battle other trainers, ultimately Pokemon battling exists pretty much 99% in service of just catching more Pokemon, where in the mainline games, catching Pokemon is a means to engaging in more battling.
Okay.
Which is why I say that, it is, this game is very much, as AJ said, if Pokemon Go was a game-ass video game.
Yeah. If Pokemon Go was a real video game and not whatever it is, quote unquote. No offense.
No,
Pokemon Go is fine.
Pokemon Go, it's one of those games that it sits alone in its own genre. It's very rare that an entirely new genre of video game gets made, and Pokemon Go kind of did that.
I wish Pokemon Go was more like this. What if you could walk around with your phone in the real world, and other than using the AR to see things, and it would recognize a tree in the we're like tens of years away from that technology, but like recognize a tree and then out from the tree comes a flying Pokemon and you have to, I don't know, then you try to aim at it and then you swipe the ball and try and catch it out of midair or something. I don't know, a little more interactive and dynamic would be really interesting for Pokemon Go. I was
going to just ask quickly, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Does the battling feel faster? Because one of the things that stuck about Sword and Shield was how slow paced it felt, especially when you compare it against something like Persona 5, as we've already discussed. Does it feel faster? I don't think
it doesn't feel faster. It's changed a little bit.
It feels different.
So you can actually run around the actual battle and get different views of it.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. Like you could, there's your Pokemon and the other Pokemon are fighting. You can literally, as it's going on, as they're about to do their attacks, you can jump in front and get hit yourself instead if you wanted to, which is a really weird thing to do. Why would you do that? I think overall I am really enjoying this game. It is really good as somebody who kind of like who grew up really liking Pokemon and still really likes Pokemon, who has like lapsed on their enjoyment of Pokemon. Like Sword and Shield, I never even played it, mostly because the gimmick of like Gigantamax or whatever it was called, didn't do it for me. It was just like, oh, good, it becomes a kaiju battle. Like that's not what is interesting about Pokemon, in my opinion. That being said, as much as I do like this, like, yes, there's the technical issues of like the visual quality, which we've had conversations about on our Discord, invite.gg/Press YYZ. Like, I don't know why Nintendo didn't like share the actual Breath of the Wild engine with them, like, because this clearly it looks like they weren't even given like the Sword and Shield engine, and more like they were given the 3DS engine and had to go from that to make this. Like some of it is just so bad. Like in the distance, like Pokemon that you see can go into like single frames of animation because it's trying to save on resources and stuff. But
this is this is very much a game that is much more worth playing with the Switch and handheld mode as opposed to docked. Played on a small screen all scrunched up, that is definitely much more preferable.
It definitely hides some of those issues. But something that I'm kind of like finding myself struggling with is, so the story of the game is you are essentially making and putting together the very first ever Pokedex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the log entries of all the different the encyclopedia of all the different Pokemon.
Okay.
Right? And in order to do that, you essentially have to research them, which means catching multiple of the same ones, witnessing them doing specific moves, or doing different kinds of like activities as you're battling with them or whatever. I think that part's neat and interesting. However, the magic has gotten lost ever since Pokemon Go and ever since Let's Go for me, because catching multiple of the same Pokemon and that leveling up or giving experience to all your Pokemon, you are not getting like Pokemon for me, and especially growing up with Generation 1 and 2 mostly, but even going through 3, 4, and Black and White, and even X when I played those. You something is missing. Like there used to be a bond created between you emotionally with these pocket monsters on your screen, right? Like, yes, there are many Growlithe around, but this one is mine. And it's sort of trivialized because, yes, there are many Growlithe around, and you need to catch all of them, and you are going to trash all the ones that you don't like and only keep the ones with the good stat.
I know exactly what you're referring to, AJ. It occurred to me a couple of hours into this game that I hadn't even assigned any of my Pokemon nicknames, not even my starter Pokemon. And mind you, the game does not prompt you to give them nicknames when you first obtain them, because it understands that this game is moving at a pretty brisk pace and it doesn't want to slow things down all the time by asking you that. But yeah, I think that this is very much, again, a kind of product of the fact that this game, at its core, is all about catching Pokemon as opposed to battling with them and bonding with them and, going through tough experiences that kind of toughen up and really kind of form a relationship between you and them.
Yeah, exactly. And like the Breath of the Wild like aspects where you're running around the world, and you're encountering these wild Pokemon like you would the Moblins in Breath of the Wild, and you capture them all or you battle them or whatever. By the way, Cozy, the alphas. So Nathan, there are alpha Pokemon. So like,
is that like shinies?
Not quite like shinies, but they're like, they're just like, the pack leader in a certain area of a group of Pokemon, right? I get very in like Breath of the Wild vibes of like the Lionel encounters with those things. Right? Those are sort of like the Zelda stand-ins for that. The Breath of the Wild takes on this are and improvements and the direction in that way are steps in the right direction. I personally feel like making it so impersonal and making all the Pokemon seem so incredibly disposable, thanks to things like Pokemon Go and whatnot, because you just catch them and release them if you don't like their stats. Just fuck off, you're too weak, get out of here. I think that totally trivializes that emotional connection with the game, and that's kind of hard for me to kind of rationalize in that regard, to find all the enjoyment that I used to have. Like that sort of magic is gone when they put so much emphasis on catching multiple of the same ones.
Interesting.
I will say, like, I'm largely in agreement with that take, AJ. Like, yeah, I really have had a much more difficult time this time around really forming an emotional bond with my team of Pokemon. Team in quotation marks, because it always is kind of rotating out, because you want to have certain Pokemon to help more easily catch a certain other type of Pokemon, or you want to level something up so that you can, gain more data for your Pokédex. I will say, though, that the game does excel in a number of areas that I feel like a lot of other previous Pokemon games have faltered. I personally have been kind of surprised by just how much lore and world building there is in this game in terms of building up the culture and people of Sinnoh, or Hisui, as it's known in the game. It really feels like, more so than with any Pokemon game that has come before it, that Game Freak built like an actual lore Bible this time around of, this is the history of the Hisui region. These are the people that inhabit it. Here's everything that has happened behind the scenes up until you entering into the game that you're not even necessarily ever going to be privy to, but that we need to have so that we can make, future story decisions to come. And I've like been surprised by how much I've been kind of enjoying that stuff. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh man, 10 out of 10, like best story ever, but it really feels like they're making a good, honest attempt in that regard, and I've been enjoying it. And I also will say, like, this game, as is typical of a lot of other open world or open world S games, has a lot of side quests, and I've found questing out, helping out the people of Jubilife Town to be a pretty satisfying experience. And I think that when you kind of set out with a specific objective in mind of, I'm going to help deal with side quest A and B, and along the way, I'm also going to plan to go through this area so that I can like capture these Pokemon or battle those Pokemon so that I can help fill out those Pokédex entries. I think the game definitely encourages you to kind of like have a specific tact plan of attack when you're going out into the field. And I feel like when you kind of follow through with that, the game is pretty good at kind of getting you to fall into a pretty good flow state.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll mention about it is less of an issue that I'm having with the Pokemon in general, but with a lot of Nintendo games in general, there's a lot of like certain quality of life things that are inherently missing from a lot of Nintendo titles specifically. For example, like you mentioned the side quest, Cozy. And I think it's a Pokemon game with all these different side quests and stuff, and it's not just a normal through line and linear adventure completely, right? You can do all the side quests. That's great. But
do you not like
the method in which do
you not like the fact that the cursor showing you the location of a side quest doesn't appear when you're facing away from it?
No, that part's fine. You can hide that and like show me what I would like. It's not a
criticism, but I hate that. I wish it would just show that on the side of the screen.
Yeah, that may be a little bit better, but I think other games across the entire industry have done side quests a lot better in terms of how you manage them from a player's perspective, because you have to go to the map and then you have to open up the quest log from the map, and if you want to go back to like, oh, who was it who gave me this quest, I can't remember that person. You actually have to select that one quest and go and it'll bring up the marker on the screen, and then you can go to that, right? Because then you know where it is.
Right.
Where, like, sure, you could just go up to that person, but you have no idea if you have a quest with them or not. Like, there should be the World of Warcraft exclamation point above somebody's head that, hey, you have completed this person's quest, just go up to them, like just in the world in general. And the other thing that I kind of struggle with, and they do similar things in Mario, they do similar things in Zelda these days, is like with cutscenes and whatnot, there's a lot of unnecessary fading to black and like in between like 10 pieces of dialogue, and then it's like another scene but just facing the other direction, and it's like there are those small quality of life things that they could make things a lot smoother.
I think the latter thing that you're describing is, I think, Game Freak trying really hard to cover up the fact that its characters barely animate in this game.
Yeah, like they didn't have a lot of animation. We already knew they clearly didn't quite have a lot of technical budget, and so spending time to animate.
Yeah, fading in and out, sort of cutting between different camera angles is their way of making it feel more cinematic and making it flow a lot better without having to move its characters that much.
Yeah, I think like where catching Pokemon and everything is like a lot faster and a lot smoother. In like that area where you actually have to play the RPG part of it, it's a lot more it's a lot more bogged down by fading to black, fading back up, and having like somebody just like animate talking and nothing's happening, and you have to wait for the camera to pan and then they're ready to tell you about it, and it's just they need like Hideo Kojima to animate their cutscenes or something, because that would make it a hell of a lot more palatable, which is saying a lot, because I didn't always appreciate Kojima's need to overtell a story with extra long cutscenes, but at least they would have been interesting and like something was happening, and not just, as minimal as this is. That being said, yeah. I actually really love this game. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it ended on a positive note.
Yeah.
So have you guys both finished the game?
No.
Okay.
I've just finished the third area. There are like boss fights in this, if you will. And I just finished the third one.
So I am in the middle of exploring the second area. This is very much a game where I feel like the more I play it, the more I understand what kind of a game it's trying to be, and that is increasing my enjoyment of it the more I go along. But I also feel like, because I've kind of come to it from this place of being like, I don't really get this all that much from the beginning, it's also kind of slowed things down a little bit. I also have had a lot of stuff going on since it came out. But I
like your birthday.
Yes, like my birthday. But I'm hoping that I can kind of like speed things up a little bit and see what the end game looks like, because I've heard that the end game apparently has like quite a bit to offer for people who are craving like more of the traditional battle-oriented Pokemon experience. But we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. Okay, so let's put a pin in Pokemon Legends Arceus. I'm sure we'll be talking about it over the next few weeks as you guys continue to play more, get into the end game. I'm sure Mitch is going to have lots to talk about when he's able to talk about it as well, because we know he's been playing that a ton as well. So, that being said, I want to jump into one or two games I've been playing before we start talking about Nobody Saves the World.
Ooh.
So Mortal Kombat 11. Finish the story mode on my streams. You can check out all the streams. They are Cozy says they are archived, so I trust him implicitly.
Yes, they are.
Excellent. So you can go back and watch the entire story with me and my reactions to the Mortal Kombat 11 story. The Aftermath DLC is okay. It kind of takes a different angle towards the story and retells portions of it. But it retcons the original ending slightly, but to put it in almost exactly the same place. It was an interesting choice. Not sure I loved the DLC tacked on for the story mode. I think it probably ended up better the first place and left things more open. That being said, it really does hint that Mortal Kombat 12, whenever that comes out, will be a prequel to the entire trilogy or to the entire series. And maybe starting way beforehand, which means that it could be an all new cast of characters. And I don't know how that would go. So, so that's more. Yeah, we'll find out. NetherRealms has to announce what they're working on at some point. It's overdue. So yeah, that's Mortal Kombat 11. Number 2, I just want to jump into Forza Horizon 4 Lego Speed Champions. AJ, did you get a chance to play any of the expansions for Horizon 4?
I did not. I enjoyed the time that I spent. Like I put more time into 4 than I did 5 for reasons we don't need to get into again. Yep. But the I did enjoy my time with it. But I never enough to like go back and like, as cool as like Lego seemed to be, I never got around to that.
So the whole concept of Horizon or Lego Speed Champions is kind of you're in a Lego world. There's 5 Lego total cars that you can unlock, and they're based on real cars like the Ferrari F40, the one of the Porsches 911, the cover car for that game, and I'm blanking on it. One of the Mini Coopers. So you have like 5 Lego cars that you can get in total as you play the game. Bugatti, one of the Bugattis. McLaren. It's a McLaren. The McLaren's the other one. That's the cover car. So you essentially, as you unlock these cars, you run around the Lego world, and each time you do a challenge, whether it's win a race or do one of the PR stunts, whether it's a speed trap or speed zone or drifting, you get a chance to earn Lego bricks. And as you get these Lego bricks, you can then unlock upgrades for your house. So you initially have just like a plain pad. And as you unlock these challenges, and they've got like 273 challenges in the game, you start checking them off as you go. For doing the races and stuff, you earn these bricks, which you can then build more things with. So you start with a little small house, and then you put additions onto the house. Then eventually it's like, hey, instead of a house, we're going to drop a soccer pitch, or no, football pitch. That's what they call it. A football field down for you on your property. And then we're going to add dinosaurs. Oh, and you need a yacht. And so they keep dropping all this cool stuff on your property for your Lego house, eventually like a UFO. But then the completionist in me caught how these challenges worked, and that you can actually go through them. And some of them are like, it was a specific car, have 20 ultimate drafting. So I just had to go into that car in a race and get ultimate drafting 20 times. Drive from point like the helipad to the lighthouse in 45 seconds in a Class B car, that sort of things, or very specific car challenges. Things like do these 2 drifting zones and get 3 stars in them within 60 seconds. So as I started to go through that, I had a lot of fun completing all the challenges, really like a lot of really fun stuff. And then once you complete every single challenge, it unlocks like this monster course that goes around the entire island twice, which isn't super long comparatively to some of the monster courses in this typical Horizon game, the mainline parts, but still super fun to play. So if you haven't had a chance and you enjoy Forza Horizon, you like Lego, this is a good pickup, a good play, very fun. And you can see a lot of the DNA and how they designed the accolade system in Forza Horizon 5 in it, in terms of the completion, because you went from 273 challenges in this Lego game to very similar style challenges, but now there's like 1,800 of them. So in Forza Horizon 5. So yeah, it's definitely worth a play. If you can get it on sale, I think I picked up for 20 with all, and that was all the DLC content for the 2 expansions, which I'm playing Fortune Island now, but I will save my opinions on that. Plus all the car packs and everything else, which seemed like a reasonable price point. So hopefully whenever they delist Forza Horizon 5, they'll follow the same path they took with Forza Motorsport 7, and if you bought any of the DLC, give you a token to download the whole game, to download the game. So
that would be nice. Hopefully they're nice enough. Yeah.
Yep. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so anyways, that being said, we've talked about what I've been playing. Let's jump in to Nobody Saves the World. So before we get started in the actual reviews, let's just talk about how many hours we played. Now, AJ, I think you're the least amount played.
Hold on. Before we talk about Nobody Saves the World, did you guys see what I put in the run of show doc for this week? Last week, we talked about how we didn't have a specific name for this particular recurring segment on Press YYZ. And so I'm announcing right here and right now, until we come up with a better name, this segment is going to be called YYZ Reviewy.
Okay, please give us a better name.
Very creative.
If you're out there and you're watching, this could be the clip for this week. Please get us a better name than YYZ Reviewy.
Hours and hours to come up with YYZ Reviewy. Took so much brain power.
Please help me. Help me so much, please.
You should. Hey, you know what? With a brain like that, you should be playing Wordle.
Yes, it's true. Although don't bring up Wordle. People stop paying attention when we talk about Wordle.
Yeah, some people.
Although I do want to give a shout out to the guy who made Wordle, and he got paid this week.
Good for him.
Yeah, 7 figures. It was a game he made for his wife to play. And he got 7 figures out of it, so good for him. I have a feeling Wordle will be less relevant in about 3 months when it's under a paywall, but not much we can do about that right now.
If it's under a paywall, remain optimistic.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. So yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so AJ, how many hours have you played?
I think I played 1 to 3 hours, somewhere in there.
1 to 3 hours. So just a taste of the game, just to kind of get a feel for it.
Yep. I bounced off of it.
Bounced off of it? Okay. So, Cozy, how many hours are you in?
I beat the game once, and I did not go back to play any more of it after I beat it. So I don't know how many hours that is. I'm going to assume it's about 20 or so.
Okay. I'm at, I think my count was 29. I did beat it, and I went back and then upgraded all my characters to to the ultimate tier.
Right.
However, I've not gone back for the final achievement of playing New Game Plus, because I'm not ready for that. Maybe down the line, and we can get into that a little bit more. Ooh. So I've not taken on any of the New Game Plus content. So that being said, AJ, why don't you start us off?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Okay, so my thoughts are a little complicated and not too fully formed. I much like similarly to the gunk, like I also get Zelda vibes from this, but like, A Link to the Past vibes as opposed to 3D Zelda vibes.
Very A Link to the Past.
Yeah. And like it's that sort of like dungeon crawlery type of game, which should in theory be right up my alley. I think for me, a lot of it lied in the like animation and the control.
Okay.
With regards to the animation, I don't want to use this as a pejorative, but it's the only reference I can make. It's a little similar to, it's a little flash gamey for me, if that makes sense. In terms of the animation and running around the world and everything, which I could look past that if I were having more fun with how it felt. I didn't like that it was only 4-directional. I feel like, especially when you unlock something like the Archer, I think it would be better as like a dual joystick type of game where a little more directional, but also like, twin stick shooter sort of thing. Yep. But even with just the rat itself, which is your first kind of like, first, we'll call it unlock power, I guess. I didn't feel like there was any weight behind any of my attacks, and I don't know if that changes later, but it didn't have a very much time to make a first impression on me, and it didn't make a good enough one. Like I recognize that it's actually a really good and good game and like super well. What's the word I'm looking for? Super, I don't know, well made and polished. Like polished, right? I can recognize that. Mm-hmm. I also, so unlocking the bow and arrow person, the hunter, I think, and then there's the sword, the ranger, and then there was the sword person, the guard, who you also unlocked essentially right beside it. It didn't feel like there was any weight to the things you were doing. It was just like your attacks, these pixels were going to go through these enemy pixels and math was going to happen and damage is done. And that's it. So that kind of left a little bit to be desired. Is there a quicker way to like change your character there? Because like having to go into the menu and then scroll over one page and then...
So you can use the right bumper.
Yeah. We'll bring up a wheel of like the characters that you've been using most recently.
Okay, so I didn't notice that, and that was holding me back too. But...
Yes. You can use now I have issues with that system. Strictly because the game doesn't pause when you switch your characters. Yeah.
Well, in co-op mode, that is.
No, in regular mode, it doesn't either.
You're right. I must be thinking of something else that we experienced during co-op.
Yeah, we'll talk about co-op together quickly. Because Cozy and I had 2+ hours in co-op, but not without its issues. But I do wish when you were playing the game that it would like pause as you were like you pulled the wheel up, because I find when I was putting the stick in the direction I wanted, it wasn't always consistent. Like I'd try to do it and I'd have the wrong form that I didn't want. So I found myself going into the menus anyways, because then at least I know the action has stopped. And I could pick the right person I wanted without having to worry about continually being attacked. So yeah, I think AJ, I can understand where you're coming from with that. I almost thought I was going to nope out pretty quickly on it. I thought it was quite hard at first. I think once I got past the ranger and the guard, and they started giving you the options to mix and match attacks.
Yeah,
and to like, and how some of the attacks would get more complicated. Like you probably didn't get the detonate unlocked for the mouse, right?
No, I don't think so. No.
So the way that detonate works is basically any enemy on screen that's been poisoned by your mouse's chompers will immediately explode. And it's one of those things where like it's pretty powerful as the rat, but you pair that with like a character with more hit points or more just raw attack power, and it could be pretty deadly.
So I think so I didn't think I was going to like it as I first started playing it, and then I want to say I pushed through the first legendary dungeon, and then it started to really, as I unlocked the slug and the turtle, really started to click for me. And the slug I thought was going to be a joke character, but he actually turned out to be. No, it really isn't. It shoots a constant stream of tears out of its eyes.
Oh, dear.
But it plays more like that twin stick shooter where, but you're right. I didn't even think about it not being 8 directional.
Yeah.
Like that you said that is only 4 directional. I never really thought about that at all.
The ranger, like you had to hold a button
to strafe.
To strafe, right?
And like works with all characters, by the way. If you hold down that button for any character, they'll be locked in place, and that will allow you to aim your attacks.
Very necessary for the horse.
Yeah,
I found that to be a little cumbersome. Which is why I kind of like was wishing it would be like a twin stick shooter, especially like that. Like, I understand what they were going for and making it 4 directional and stuff like that. You know, that makes it a little more Zelda like a Link to the Past or something like that. But
and you can see the influences in Zelda in this, as well as like some other games. I think what worked for me, as I was playing the game, was just the amount of sheer, like everything is about quests and quest completion. You constantly have that, like the quests on the side of the screen as you're playing. Cozy and I, while we were playing together, we're just looking at what quests we needed to do and what characters we needed to play as to do those quests. And it kind of gave us a chance to really get familiar with characters maybe we wouldn't have played. And because some of the characters, like there's custom quests, it's not just about the abilities that you earn, but like pairing your abilities with other characters' abilities. It kind of showed you some of the unlocked like potential that you could have with different builds. Because you get to a certain point when you realize, okay, this is about building like the best potential character I can in this game. And how can I make it as powerful as I can? So like Cozy in the screen he's playing here, he's playing as the ghost. And I didn't even really touch the ghost at all. And I think
it's just not one that vibe with you.
Yeah, you were pretty good with it, weren't you, Cozy?
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a learning curve, but yeah.
So, Cozy, let's talk about your thoughts.
Yeah, so like my super ultra short abridged thoughts on this game are I like it. I think it's good. Slightly less abridged thoughts. Last week, or rather 2 weeks ago, time is very confusing in the pandemic, we reviewed Image Inform's The Gunk, and I came down a little bit harsher on it than I think the two of you did, but after playing this game, reflecting back on The Gunk, I do have to hand it to Image Inform for making the jump to 3D, even though the result of the fruit of their efforts wasn't that outstanding. That's still a difficult jump to take. And I say that because, in contrast, this game, Nobody Saves the World, is less so of a major leap forward and more of a leap to the side. It's very much a lateral move for a studio like Drinkbox that is primarily dealt in 2D based games for pretty much the entirety of its time as a developer. And while I think that ultimately this is a better game, a much more enjoyable experience than the Gunk, I kind of come away from it a little bit more disappointed. Again, because I just feel like even though the results of their efforts weren't great, Image and Form kind of accomplished more by making that jump.
Okay.
I think that a lot of the stuff that AJ you expressed, mixed feelings about, like not being able to move in 8 directions, you feeling like your attacks didn't have much impact, are not really issues that I had. Mind you, I played, for quite a bit more time, and so it's possible that like maybe you would have felt the same way that I did after you make your way into deeper dungeons and start encountering enemies that have like crazy shields and huge groups of enemies that you just trash all at once. I generally was quite fond of combat in this game. I thought that a lot of the like quests that the game doles out that allow you to kind of level up your characters were consistently fun, even if they got a little bit tricky and complicated when you had to mix and match abilities from other characters. I just to me, I just feel like this game really is sort of lacking in a lot of the heart that I feel like the Guacamelee games had outside of its combat. I just find the world, while beautifully rendered, feels chaotic and random to the point of me just not really kind of caring about it or its cast of characters. And I feel like much the same can be said about the story of the game as well. Up until I would say maybe the final like hour or so, there's a couple of things that ramp up story wise towards the end there that I actually maybe go like, oh, like this is actually making me feel something. But other than that, like this is very much one of those games that you come into for the grind and not much else. But the grind, IMO, is really, really good and surprisingly like well polished.
Yeah, I really liked I think the grind is what kept me coming back to it as well. You're right about story. Like when I look back at some of the prior games that Drinkbox has done, we've got Mutant Blob's Attack, which really doesn't have a huge story going throughout it. But it's interesting enough. It's a short experience, and I think it gets you through it. Then Guacamelee, you really had, I guess it was the memes. It was really all about the memes with Guacamelee. And then Severed told like a darker tale about man, it's been a while since I played Severed, but a girl whose family who's died, and you're trying to, like, it's a darker tale than they've ever told. And then Guacamelee 3 comes back with humor, or 3 with 2 with humor and the Mexiverse.
Yeah.
And kind of spends a lot of time referencing other video game universes.
Guacamelee, which 2, is like, I'm not going to sit here and say again, greatest story of all time, 10 out of 10, but that game story like follows up on a lot of stuff that was set up in Guacamelee 1 in like really like unexpectedly clever ways. Like there's some really clever writing in that game.
No, and I think that's where this loses it for me a little bit, where the gameplay is fun, the grind is fun, but like you don't feel a connection to the characters. The nobody's literally a nobody, where it has no personality whatsoever. And you have to rely on the personality of everybody else. And you don't quite hit those characters that they've had in their other games. I think Randy's probably the best character, and he's humorous every time you see him. And actually, you begin to feel for him in the end.
Yeah.
Which I did not expect. So good on them for doing that. But none of the other characters really stick out beyond needing to give you quests. They're more of a something to the means.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, in terms of playing co-op, I think Cozy and I were a little disappointed when we actually tried to play co-op. Number one, we couldn't actually play in Cozy's game for whatever reason. It just wouldn't connect.
I mean, I don't want to like. I want to be careful that we like not specifically like finger that on the part of Drinkbox. Like, who knows what kind of connectivity issues were going on under the hood that was not their fault at all. But yeah, that unfortunately wasn't happening.
No, but we could connect on mine. So, but I think one of the things is when you play co-op, you're helping the other person with their progress, but you don't get any progress out of it.
Yeah, which I
your
did.
Story.
I did go back and listen to a VOD of a kind of funny stream where they had the Drinkbox developers on, and they directly addressed that specific issue with the game, and basically it came down to for them being like, we could like focus on a more kind of expensive multiplayer suite, but like just the time and resources in this case aren't worth it, which I totally understand. Like a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes in game development that we aren't privy to, that we would think is as simple as flipping a switch, but in reality is probably way more complex. And so I definitely want to give them the benefit of the doubt in that particular regard. But I'm still disappointed that we couldn't do what you're describing, Nathan.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we imagined it would be like. And then it was just disappointing, I think, when we got to what the actual play was. And it was great for me because we were able to unlock like the dragon form, but it didn't really do anything for you besides us have a good time.
Yeah. I will say also, though, that, I mean, in terms of latency, like the game played pretty well with the two of us on screen, even with like a crazy amount of enemies coming after us.
I'll agree with that. You like with having enemies on the screen and familiars being created on our side as well. Yeah. So it ran really well. There was no problems connection wise. It's just, if you're going to play with friends, don't expect to have progression. Like this might be a game where you just want to play with a friend in total from start to finish instead of focusing on yours. Now on the positive, you do unlock all the achievements as your friend does it, because you got a bunch of achievements early.
That's right.
I was going to say, like, the little bit that I did play, like much like when I said with the gunk, the gunk might be something I want to hand the controller to Rachel and see how she does. This might be something where, like, me being the good video game player, like I might want to give her a controller and have her hop in and have a good time together, and she can support me depending on the character she chooses from a distance or something like that, or what have you. But now it might get a little too chaotic for her, but it's one of those I definitely would be interested in, like, giving it a try, seeing how she adapts to it.
I actually don't think there's couch co-op for this. I think it's only
weird.
Online co-op.
Okay, so somebody's going to have to do the cloud stream, and then
it gets a lot more complicated. I think couch co-op would have been a great addition to it. So
really weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. So anyways, couch co-op aside, I just wanted, like I said, it wasn't bad. It ran well. I just don't think it's what we were expecting. So overall, I think it's a charming, it's a game with some charm, but lacks a personality.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I do think that all of the characters that you can transform into have a lot of personality to them. I remarked this during the stream that we played the game together on, Nathan. This game is sort of like secretly kind of a Digimon game, in the sense that the way in which you kind of progress through all the characters that you can play as feels sort of like a series of Digimon evolutions. We've all seen the memes online of like, oh, evolution in Pokemon, it's like a kitten evolves into a cat, evolves into a lion, and then evolution in Digimon, it's like a kitten evolves into a velociraptor, evolves into like a fridge with a minigun. That's very much what unlocking all the characters in this game is like. It's like, oh, your rat evolves into an archer, which evolves into a mermaid, which evolves into a necromancer, which evolves into, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that was like an intentional thing on the part of the studio, but like they could have laid out the way in which you unlock all of the characters in the game in a much different fashion. And the fact that they instead went with this, again, Digi-evolution-esque tree of evolutions, I think was a good choice. Yeah,
I agree with that. It's funny. I saw an early trailer for the game I watched, and the layout was completely different. It was scrolled to the right, and had arrows all over the place. It wasn't all leading back into one, or at least that I could see based upon the early theme. So yeah, in terms of going back to the game, and doing the New Game Plus, I think at some point I'm going to tackle a New Game Plus run. I just don't think I'm into it yet. I've beaten the game. They remix all the dungeons so that they're much harder with harder qualifications on each of them. And the first legendary dungeon does 999 damage built into it for every hit. So yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back for that. It doesn't seem as fun because I died a few times in that first dungeon, or in that first legendary dungeon. And you have to beat every dungeon to get to the end of the game, because that's the only way to get the stars. Because at this point, it's recognized that you've probably done all your quests at this point, or most of your quests. So you can't based on get your stars based on that. So you get 10 stars per dungeon, and then every legendary dungeon has the exact right amount to get into it. So, yeah. So anyways, I think we like Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah.
I think we just wish we loved it a little more, at least for Cozy and I. And for AJ, it just didn't click. So, yeah. And that's going to happen.
Last week, I gave The Gunk, I believe, 2 out of 5 stars. I definitely give this game a solid 3 out of 5 stars. I think that if you have Game Pass, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out, even amidst all of the other games on Game Pass that are equally, I would say, worth checking out. Just keep in mind that this game isn't quite the second coming from Drinkbox that you would hope it would be. It's a lateral move coming off of what they've done in the past, which is understandable. When you make a game that's as good as Guacamelee 2, I think it's a wise decision to be like, hey, we're not going to try to create lightning in a bottle again. Let's try and make something much different so it can be judged on its own terms. But even through that lens, I think that it's not quite the same level of, doesn't quite hit the same level of high standard that we've come to expect from the studio.
Yeah. So anyways, so give it a try. I think it's worth at least dipping your toes and see if it's your feel. I know, judging based on what I've seen on Twitter, people either really liked it or it didn't really connect with people, and they got far enough in it that they just felt like they should beat it. So yeah. That being said, Windjammer's next week for Press YYZ Reviewy.
Hell yeah, it's sticking. It's spreading like a virus.
Please help us. Help me, please. All right, you can clip that out for this week's bit. All right. That being said, so we're 9:17 right now. I don't think this is going to be a long discussion anyways, but we have it in the notes. Obviously, we are living in, I know Blessing keeps talking about the review season, but really it feels like the acquisition season, with everything being acquisized. So yeah, it's acquisition season. We've talked about the ramifications of Microsoft buying Activision. Now we have more acquisitions since that's happened. Sony yesterday out of nowhere bought Bungie. This is obviously not in response to Activision. It may seem like it, but something like this would have been in the talks for probably months and months and months. So yeah. How are you all feeling?
As a longtime Xbox fan,
yep,
this one stings a little bit.
Is it like Xbox buying Crash and Spyro?
So it's different because, yes, those games were for a while exclusive to PlayStation.
Yep.
But they didn't, we look back on those games nostalgically, sure, and they could come back and they could be great,
Yep.
But we don't necessarily look back on those with the same reverence and like, this thing revolutionized this aspect of gaming that we do for something like Halo. And Bungie being the original creators of Halo, they yeah, it stings a little bit, and I'm not offended by it.
Okay.
I think yeah. Good for much like the creator of Wordle, good for Bungie for finding a partner that they, even though they made a bad choice the last time they tried to partner with somebody, good for them for finding somebody who hopefully respects their vision and wants to utilize their ideas and technologies fairly.
Yeah, I think this is a good news situation. I think for people who are mainly Xbox or don't have a PlayStation, they've already come out and said they're going to continue to be multi-platform and develop for both consoles. Yeah. So, and that'll continue with Destiny existing and any new IP. Yeah. So they kind of have that autonomy, which no other PlayStation studio at this point has. So it's very interesting. It's almost like and I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts. So, forgive me if some of these seem like they're repeated. But I think that all happens as we listen and learn and like talk things through. But they, bought this with the intention of really, and I think Jim Ryan has said this in his interview, with really leveraging Bungie's knowledge of the live service business. Because apparently they have 10 live service games that they'd like to have out by 2026. Sony first party live service games.
Yeah.
So it sounds more like Sony bought them for knowledge and to help them out than necessarily the other way around.
So here's a question that I want to ask you guys. When I first heard of this announcement, obviously I was overcome with all sorts of thoughts and questions and just sheer madness of the brain in general. The one thing that remained after all those other thoughts cleared, though, was, man, this new IP that Bungie is working on in the background could end up being really, really super good. I had known, as we all have for a while now, that Bungie had been working on a new IP in the background that would be independent of the Destiny universe. I had no interest in it, and now that I know that it's going to, be published under the kind of PlayStation umbrella, that gets me really kind of excited for it, because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be the first-person shooting expertise of Bungie, potentially mixed with some of the, storytelling acumens that we tend to associate PlayStation with. But with what you just talked about, Nathan, about PlayStation really being hungry to set up a lot of games as a service experiences, ongoing games experiences, like, I'm beginning to wonder if this game that Bungie is working on in the background is perhaps not going to be what I envisioned it could be in those wee hours after this acquisition was made public. If it is going to be not like another Destiny, but like Destiny on a smaller scale. Because if it is, that's not super appealing to me, even if it does feature a little bit of that Sony storytelling acumen.
Yeah. So at this point, you have to figure the IP's been in development for a while. So I don't think, even if it was, it wouldn't have, so like Sony wouldn't be shaping it at this point and guiding it, like maybe to a point, but like you got to figure their IP's well into development. It's not like with their other first party studios where they greenlight everything. They have to come to them with ideas and I guess it's not Shu anymore, to Herman Hulst to get the okays on what they move forward with and what they don't move forward with. So that IP would have probably been in development anyways, and you probably would have gotten whatever it is, maybe with some Sony tweaks to it. But yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. AJ, what do you think?
Can you ask the question again? Sorry. There was a lot there.
Like super long bridge into a short version of the question is, do we think that this second IP that Bungie is working on in the background is going to kind of be like Destiny on a smaller scale, or is it potentially, hypothetically, going to be Bungie's shooting acumens meets Sony's storytelling first-person shooter, Dad of War acumens?
Well, hopefully they like Sony clearly bought them for their online infrastructure technology and like multiplayer prowess, which is great. And hopefully they lend their hand at storytelling and stuff, because I think the Destiny story could have been good if it wasn't all hidden behind grimoire cards on the website. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So at the very least, I think they're going to get more of an opportunity to tell their story and tell it the way they envision it, as opposed to just, cut.
How much Destiny have you played?
I beat both of them.
Okay.
And each one I played for a good 2 weeks consistently for, every day after work. But none of the expansions grabbed me, because none of the world itself was not enticing enough to keep going. Like, the most fun I had in Destiny 1 was probably the loot cave. And then in Destiny 2, I think the most fun that I have was actually the end game of the main story, which is now actually apparently very difficult to like try and find and get back into. Like, let's say you wanted to play the story of Destiny 2 again and relive that experience. It's an ongoing service game, and it's a lot of that is like either behind a menu of like, oh, hey, here's this old mission. If you want, whatever, man, like go play it, I guess, something. And it's just like, no, if I want to play Destiny 2 again and I want to start from the beginning, I want to go through the entire progression that I already went through. So hopefully them partnering with Sony can they can lend each other's strengths to each other to hopefully bring out something cool.
I don't know if I ever talked about this on the podcast, but I actually logged quite a few hours into Destiny 2 in, I want to say 2018, because like a friends group that I was rolling with at the time was really into it. And I actually got to participate in some pretty cool things. I played through and completed the normal version of Destiny 2's Leviathan raid, where you're kind of going through this giant celestial palace and completing all these tasks that require you to kind of coordinate things amongst yourselves. And there are some moments in that Leviathan raid where like you're kind of in the midst of performing all these tasks all at once. You're trying to make sure that everything goes off like this human controlled Rube Goldberg machine. And it really does feel special. And in terms of like talking about, what Bungie can bring to PlayStation Studios, like obviously there's the games as a service, constantly live experience aspect of it. I'd be interested in seeing if they could figure out how to kind of translate that type of, multiple players have to coordinate these crazy interactive puzzles aspect of their games into some of Sony's like single player-ish experiences. Because those were really special, and I feel like there are not a lot of studios that I can point to in the industry now that like do stuff that's really kind of comparable to that.
Mm-hmm.
Destiny is one of those games where I missed it when it first came out, and I remember hearing about, like, was it the Peter Dinklage who was the original voice?
Yeah. Bring back the Dink.
And then they switched it to Nolan North.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Like people thought it was very robotic and not quite.
That wizard came from the moon.
Yeah, that was the big line that everybody said. So yeah, so it was I remember that, but as the games got further and further away, it didn't seem like, and I think this happens with a lot of like live service games and MMOs, that is harder and harder for you to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole point of Destiny 2 was to have a jumping off point for new people in again. But then, to your point, AJ, you can't go and play some of the original story stuff now. It's just not there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's just more of like it's less about story and more about the mechanics and the shooters. And we know Bungie is great at mechanics. They have shooters down, and also a side topic we haven't discussed is that this really fills a shooter niche that they don't have at the moment. And at the same time, too, well, we assume there are some shooters in development for PlayStation because there's the two studios that are working on FPSs. The one, Devolution?
Yeah.
Devolution? And then like Firewalk?
It's the Arceus of Sony studios.
Yeah. So they've got two studios. So how great would it be now to have somebody from Bungie be able to go in and look at what they're doing?
Yeah.
And see where they're at with their stuff, because we don't know what's going on with COD. Seems to be like it's going to be on PlayStation for at least a few more years. Mm-hmm. If not entirely based upon comments, but I think we'll get a better idea. But if not, they need something in the like that's going to work in the bank. So this will help them out and fill that void. I still think, and I think this sells a lot too. And here's something I haven't seen or heard explored. Do you think they have purposely left it multi-platform? And put it that they're going to let them stay multi-platform in terms of things like acquisitions of Bethesda from the other side?
So like to try and like, we're going to let you play everywhere and not restrict it. We're better than you sort of deal.
Not even a we're better than you, but kind of as like a chip, like a bargaining chip to be like, maybe you should, put that Starfield over here. Or like just, or maybe Starfield is not a good one because of the IP, but let's say Skyrim.
Yeah,
Skyrim, which like Elder Scrolls has been everywhere, so maybe the next Elder Scrolls comes out.
Yeah, I wonder if that was like Sony's play, or if that was part of Bungie's bargaining. Like these guys were desperate to fill the void of like the online multiplayer and even a bit of a shooter space or whatever at Sony. So maybe it was like no, you have to let us, like, because I believe the verbiage was they will maintain like self-publishing rights if they want to. So maybe that means like PlayStation and PC in terms of like cross-platform support. Maybe Sony will cover funding for that and publish that on those platforms. But maybe if Bungie wants to bring it to Xbox as well, they are free to do so, right? Because they retain self-publishing rights. Maybe that just means, okay, Sony will cover PlayStation publishing and PC publishing, and you have to cover the publishing of it on other consoles or other places.
Yeah, Stadia. It'll be really interesting to see. I forgot about Stadia.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Never forget.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think we won't have a better idea of how that looks until they publish a new IP or a new game.
Yeah.
Because at the existing time, it's just going to stay the way it is. And with MLB The Show, it does not flash the Sony logos before Xbox, I believe.
It says something about Sony Studios.
Studio?
Yeah,
maybe it does that.
Yeah, that black screen with the small Sony.
Yeah.
Studios font, right? Yeah, I think it does that.
They didn't publish the game. They didn't publish it. MLB published it.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so I think this is interesting. We won't have a better idea until Bungie releases a new game, and who knows when that's going to be. There. Go ahead.
Maybe MLB being on Xbox proved to Sony that, hey, our PlayStation titles can make money elsewhere and still be good, even if it's on Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's it, because like the next one is apparently also coming to Switch.
Yes, which
right?
I'm super worried about.
We'll see.
Did the one from the previous year come to Switch as well?
No, this is a first. It's the first time it's been on Switch.
I mean, we'll see how that game fares, but I would think, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm being ignorant on this, but I would think the fact that they skipped over the previous year and are only coming out with the game now is because they didn't feel confident in whatever the previous year's product would have been, and so they wanted to take some more time to make sure that this year's would have been as good as it possibly can be for the Switch's architecture. I don't know if that's like maybe an overly positive way of looking at this situation, but that's what I'm thinking.
I guess we'll see. The Switch version, like they haven't done it before. EA has struggled. Like if we're just going to look at a similar type of thing, EA has struggled with FIFA titles because it's the only sports title they brought to the Switch are the FIFA titles, and they just get like roster updates every year now. They're an older version that is not on par with existing platforms. This is an older game, but WWE 2K19 was a dumpster fire on Switch. It was almost literally unplayable with half the modes and like slow down to an extreme point.
Yeah.
So, but if they found a way to graphically dumb it down, but get the same feel for it, because it will be cross play and cross save, I think, between all the consoles. So you could have a situation way back in the day. You remember when cross save first happened, and there was this little device that's about to turn 10 called the Vita.
What is that?
There was a big push at the time to have cross play and cross save with MLB The Show, so you could take it on the go on your Vita and then pick the same game up on your PS3.
How is that?
Hey, I don't know. I'm not a big show guy, but it worked. So, like, this could be a similar situation.
Nathan, you said that was like a big initiative on Sony's part. It was, but I really don't remember, outside of like the indie game space, a ton of like AAA games that sort of took advantage of that cross-play, beam it to your Vita and take it on the go before you come back and beam it back to your PS3 or PS4 functionality.
The problem is that AAA stuff wasn't coming to the Vita.
Right. The only game that I remember, like the one big example that immediately comes to mind is Borderlands 2, and that infamously like didn't run super well. But I know that there were definitely other examples, but they're not coming to mind.
There wasn't a lot, and you're right. A lot of it was smaller indie game stuff where you could go back and forth with your saves. Guacamelee, I think had cross save. And you're able to jump between it.
And like, no, I don't mean this with any offense towards Drinkbox, but like Guacamelee, not a game that's really, pushing it graphically or technically.
Oh yeah. The Vanillaware game. Dragon's Crown. Dragon's Crown. Did that as well. MLB sold a Vita, and okay, so Kyle's got some stuff in the chat here. So MLB sold Vita. Okay, so you got a PlayStation and a Vita copy together?
So
he said that's the one thing that tempted him to get it. It was cross-buy as well. So they put a few more incentives in there. Regardless, at this point, if you are a major MLB fan, you can get it on Switch and potentially move your save to either PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or S when you get home. So if you're looking to buy 2 copies, if you're PlayStation, or just 1 extra copy of Switch if you get it through Game Pass. So I'm kind of curious too if this means that MLB The Show 21 will leave Game Pass. So if you've been can you carry your content over, or will it leave when 22 comes on board?
I don't know.
So, because I'm curious about that as well. And then if you can't carry your progress over, will people be annoyed to start over again? That's the grind with the annual sports series, though. I'm assuming it'd be there. All EA games are there, but it's not EA. So, and there's usually no progression over it. So, if you're currently playing it and you put a lot of time into the show, do you feel like you're going to want to buy it before it leaves Game Pass to get your content back? So, I don't know. I'm curious. There's a lot of precedents to be set here. There's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. That being said, the whole MLB show talk completely deviated us from the Bungie conversation. So, so I think we talked about a lot of the interesting stuff there. So we've talked about what Bungie gains out of it. We talked about, I think more importantly, what PlayStation gains out of it. We've talked about just like the ramifications and what the future looks like in terms of future IPs, and from a perspective of, as they're staying multi-platform, what does that look like? And does that put pressure on Xbox to do similar things if they acquire studios? AJ you brought up a good point in terms of, like, we kind of don't know and what that future looks like. And I think PlayStation needs another acquisition to do something similar before we see this being a pattern versus a one-off. Because you were right about the publishing rights and how that works, and like, do they publish elsewhere? So we kind of need to see somebody else be acquired, and do they get those same options? So what are you guys' final thoughts? Because I don't want to just drag this out if we don't need to.
I mean, unfortunately,
actually, wait. Before we get to final thoughts, sorry, there's one more piece here. Jim Ryan has said, and I think this is important, we shouldn't skip over it, that there are more acquisitions coming, and you should expect to see more in the future.
There sure are. There sure are.
I think that has me less optimistic, but specifically to the Sony Bungie thing, I am optimistic of their partnership specifically.
Okay. So you're optimistic about the partnership. So it's kind of a wait and see what happens going forward with, but like, other studios being acquired, because you have to wonder if they'll want the same deal that Bungie got. Yeah. If there's future acquisitions, especially as they will come after this Bungie deal, so they'll see the precedent that was set there. So, Cozy, what about you? So let's start with your final thoughts. I rudely interrupted you.
Nah, it's not a problem. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, much like the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft a few weeks back, we won't know the full ramifications of this for a little while to come. I will say, shortly after news of this broke, I did see a really funny comment on YouTube from a guy that was like, "Oh man, it'd be really cool if Bungie could work on a reboot of Killzone or Resistance next." And first off, light one candle for those two series. Afraid that even if Sony bought every other studio in the world, I don't think they would revive either of them. I will say though, in a very kind of selfish way, I would be fascinated by the concept of a Killzone game made by Bungie, considering that Killzone was originally meant to be a Halo killer. Like, that's
oh my god,
I don't feel like we've ever had a scenario exactly like that in the history of the entire industry, and it probably will not happen in this case either. But hey, it's a possibility now. Let's see it happen.
Just on that token, I actually don't hate Killzone. I know a lot of people don't like Killzone. I have fond memories of Killzone 3.
I do
and
too.
Playing through that, especially because I use the Move controllers with the sharpshooter. And it was a lot of fun. Even the multiplayer was good. I enjoyed playing the multiplayer. They did a lot of cool things with it. But I just don't think it had the cachet to ever be like that top tier shooter. There was too much preventing that from happening. So sorry.
Yeah.
So I actually wouldn't mind seeing that happen. But you never know. AJ, what about you? Or wait, we already talked about your final thoughts.
Yeah, we talked about. Yeah.
I mean, we can just keep cycling through the three of us, asking what our final thoughts are, and we can always give a different response each time.
These are the thoughts that never end.
We can keep this podcast going forever if you want.
I feel like I have to ask more people what their final thoughts are, but there's only the two of you guys, so my apologies. Yeah, I think this is wait and see for me. I think this is a good move for Sony. I like the fact that they're staying multi-platform. At this point, I don't care. I'm platform agnostic. I definitely now own an Xbox and have put a significant portion of time into that Xbox. So it doesn't matter to me, but I think really we need to, because a lot of these acquisitions turn into console wars about which system is better, and we need to start getting away from that and stop focusing on what console's better or fighting about it and just figuring out where to play cool games. So, yeah. All right.
Called Game Pass.
On Game
That's
Pass.
Where, yeah.
I do enjoy Game Pass. Which reminds me, I'm going to try this at, because I'm paying what, $19 a month with tax for my Game Pass subscription.
Yeah. Something like that.
Costco has a 3-month card for $45.
Whoa.
So I think I figured out you could save like $60 a year.
Go for it.
By getting a few cards. So
that's a game a year that you're saving.
Yeah.
On top of just having access to everything.
Yep. So yeah, so that being said, let's wrap up the show. So just a few quick reminders. I'll be doing Rank the Fatalities with Mortal Kombat tomorrow, so please tune in for that. Love to hear your ratings as I figure out what type of rating system I'm using. I'm thinking I might do rating systems with the existing cast of Press YYZ, like 3 cozies out of 4 AJs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that would work or how we'd quantify that, but I think it could be fun. And let me know what your thoughts are on the fatalities. I think some will be, they're all going to be really gruesome, but like, what do you like? What don't you like? And then Cozy, you're going to be playing Windjammers 2 on Monday, correct?
Yep. That's the intention. Anybody here on this podcast or who normally would be on this podcast, but is not here at the moment, or anybody currently listening that wants to participate, is free to reach out and we can Windjam together.
All right. And so let's wrap it up then. So thanks for tuning in to Press YYZ. If you enjoyed this broadcast, please be sure to follow us on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube, and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Yeah, that's right. You can go to Spotify and actually rate podcasts as well. So for all you Android people who have been out in the dark and not being able to review podcasts because you don't have Apple, you now have an option, and you can do it on Spotify. You can also check us out on Twitter at Press YYZ and slide into our Discord at invite.gg/Press YYZ to keep the conversation going. We have a great group. I don't think we had much going on for the state of play that happened today for GT, but we try to get into voice chats and stuff when there's cool events and stuff going on if we're not reacting to it. So there is definitely a bit of a community. We'd love to have you come join us. Until next time, thanks for playing, guys. Have a great night.